Hello everyone, welcome to this new video. I am Costa from InsightStat, and today we are going to talk about filter context. In our previous video, we talked about row context. We saw how row context is applied row-wise. Any formula or any new calculated column that we come up with is applied row by row. Now, what is filter context? Now, just because we have the words context in both row and filter does not make them a related concept. Filter context is not similar to row context. Filter context is like shining a spotlight on our data. So it determines which rows it should make, or Power BI should make visible for our calculations, right? So it's a way of drilling down into information. It's a way of applying filters, more meaningful filters, to slice and dice the data to be shown to us so that it makes much more sense, right? Okay, if I have complicated things, let's uncomplicate. Let's dissect into this concept. So I have this total sales with me, right? So total sales is nothing but all the quantities that we have sold multiplied by the product price, right? It's quantity multiplied by product price, and then we have summed up all those values. So we have a total sales of 24 million, close to 25 million. Now, at this stage, the question that we should be asking is, what is this 24 million? So this 24 million is the entire sales, or this 24 million is the sales within the current filter context. Now you might be confused. You might say, hey, we have not applied anything here. We have not applied any filters here. How can you say that this is within the current filter context? Filter context is always present when we do any kind of calculations. Now, to simplify things, so when I said this 24.9 million is in the current filter context, it means whatever relationship exists between all my tables, between all these tables that you see here, whatever is the as is condition, however we might have formed the data model here, that is our current filter context. Okay, so filter context always exists in the entire relationship, or in how we represent data in its very root form, right? So right now, this is total sales by customer, by all customers, by all product categories, by all product names, by all product subcategories, by all dates, everything, by all countries, everything combined. This is the total sales. Now, if I go to the calendar lookup table and I bring in the rows, I bring in the year. Look at what has happened. So now the current filter context has changed. Now I'm saying that I want to look at total sales by year. And in Power BI, this is very, very simple. All I had to do was bring in the year column, right? And if you come from a SQL background, in SQL background, we might have to do a group by the year. Here, we don't have to do anything of that sort. All you have to do is bring in the year, and now I have the year brought in, and each of the rows now has a filter context of the year. So each of the row here is now showing a year-wise total sales. Okay. Again, I would reiterate, this all is possible because of the relationship that exists between the sales data table and the calendar lookup table. It is only because there is an active relationship. This is the active relationship, right? If we look at the properties, we have a many to one relationship from the sales to calendar, and from the calendar to the sales, we have a one to many relationship. Only because there is an active relationship established, we can have a filter context between calendar lookup and sales data. Okay. Now, the next question that should come to your mind is, what are the different ways of coming up with filters or filter context? Different ways of coming up with filters, right? So we can have slicers. This is a slicer. We'll talk about slicers, how to come up with slicers in our upcoming videos when we start off with data visualization. There is a page level or a visual level filter. So this is a filters on this visual. So on this visual, what kind of filters do we have? There is a page level filter. On this entire page, are we applying any filters? So there are different ways of coming up with filters. And all these filters, when we apply, will add to the filter context. Now, let's say if I want to filter the yearly sales by the country. Okay, I have the country slicer here. I have all the countries, and let's say I want to filter the sales of 2020, 2021, 2022 by Canada. But nothing happened. There is no change here. Why? Because there is no active relationship between my territory, from where country comes from, the territory lookup table, and the sales table, right? So what I did was, before the video, I deleted this relationship between territory lookup and the sales table, right? So if there is no active relationship, filter context would not be applied, right? So let's say I again come up with the relationship here. So we see that this is a one-to-many relationship from the dimension table to the fact table, which is correct. So now we have an active relationship. Now if I go back to my visual, you'll see that this number has changed from 24 million. It is now 1.7 million, right? So if I click on Australia, it is 7.4 million. So now what is the filter context? The filter context is by country and by year, right? So I can bring in more filter context here. So let's say I want to bring in the category name. So if I drag the category name here, and if I click on accessories, so now my filter context is by year and by the category name. And on top of that, if I want to look at how maybe Germany fares, so this is by category, by country, and by the year, right? So this is how filter context is applied. And in order to apply filter context, we need to have active relationship between the tables. And what is it doing? It is slicing and dicing the data. It is slicing and dicing information, and it is putting specific spotlights so that we interpret information better, right? Now we can have filter context. Let me remove this filter. Okay, so now we can have filter context hard-coded into our measures as well. So if I go to the total sales, if you look at the total sales here, how total sales has been calculated, I'm using an iterator function, and this iterator function sums up row by row for the sales data table, where I'm multiplying the order quantity and I'm bringing the product price using the related function, which we saw in our previous video. Now, if I put in, let's say, instead of, there is one more function called this calculate, which we will talk about in the next video. Using the calculate, I can bring in more granularity or more flexibility into my measure calculation. Now, let's say, using some other function, if I bring in the country name inside the formula, inside this DAX calculation formula, it will apply the filter context right inside of this function, which we will see in our upcoming videos. Don't worry about it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that filter context can be applied or can be hard-coded inside a DAX formula as well, right? Now, we also have to note one important thing here. That is the filter context of the total here. So in most cases, you will see whenever we apply filter context, the total might not get impacted, right? So whenever we add up all these rows, we might see that the total here might not match. Now in this case, I know it is matching. If we add all these three up, this would match the $24.9 million. But there might be scenarios where you might see that the individual row totals, when we add them up, might not add up to this final total. So now you have to think here. Each of these rows has a filter context associated with it based on which these numbers have been filtered. But what is the filter context of the total row? The total row does not have any filter context. The total row sums up whatever is the individual filter context, right? So the total row does not have or does not come under the purview of the entire filter context that have been applied here. As I said, in this case, it's not applicable because in this case we see that whenever we add these, it'll add up to this total value. But there will be situations where you will see that the total value does not match to the summed up value of the individual rows, right? Because the total row does not work as per the filter context, which we will see in later videos as well. So I just wanted to put it out there so that you have better context. So I'm going to leave this video here. I don't want to complicate things because filter context is a very deep concept. I just wanted to introduce this concept today so that whenever we are talking about filter context, you are not taken off guard. Right, so we talked about filter context, how it is not the same or how different it is from row context, which is a row level concept. Filter context helps us put the spotlight on specific part of the data so that we can extract insights, we can extract better information out of it, right? So that's all I had for today. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you have liked it, please do give a like and subscribe. If you have any questions, put it in the comments. And I will see you guys in the next video, which is also a follow-up of this video where we are going to talk about the calculate DAX function. Right? Thank you so much. Bye-bye.